2nd of February. Happy birthday to my dad today. He is 79 today. And also too, happy Art Deco to everyone that was here across the weekend. Even though it was cancelled, they still got out in spirit. And, you know, you know what they say, the show must go on. And that's one thing I loved about the Art Deco spirit here in the Bay across the weekend. Everyone got into it and it was amazing. You're obviously with the Skeinz Diaries, episode 71. I'm Maree, and I've got my little bit of Art Deco on this morning. This arrived in the post this morning. Isn't it beautiful? This is called the Rainbow Green Cloche, and it has been knitted by the lovely Barbara Quigley, and she popped it in the post for me. We're going to pop it out in the shop very shortly, and a whole bunch, and some of her vintage patterns from the collection, which I will add to the vintage pattern vault here in stores. So thank you, Barbara. And I couldn't believe it as soon as I saw it turn up, and with what I'm wearing today, this wasn't planned. Except I apologise. I literally realise now, just looking at myself there, I look a bit washed out. I have got lip gloss on, but I haven't got my nice bright lips on today. So I'm not sick, I promise. I just haven't got myself organised. How is everyone across the weekend? It has been stunning here. Perfect weather for those that did make it to celebrate some Art Deco here in the Bay, which was incredible. I was in on Saturday and saw so many. It was heaving in here on Saturday, and in no small part because we had the wonderful Lynn Walsh here from Fibre to Go. She was here Friday and Saturday, and it was amazing. I know so many of you enjoyed the beautiful yarn that she brought with her. It was utterly gorgeous, absolutely gorgeous. And it was neat. It was so much fun. So it was so good to see everybody. And it's really weird, you know, this time of year is really exciting and super, super busy for us because Art Deco weekend here in the Bay is kind of like this. It's almost like a seesaw. Like we know that once we've had Art Deco weekend, we've hit the pivot. That's like the pivot of the summer seesaw. And now that we head over and we head into sort of the harvest season is the next one that we have here with all the fruits and veg. And I know actually too, vintage has just started. This picking has already been happening at a number of vineyards. And then we're sort of heading into full on knit season, which I just love. And of course, we have our epic sale, which is going to be in March, and that is coming very soon. So you're going to start seeing more things around that popping up. There's a few things a few cats I can let out of the bag now. Cat number one is that if you're wanting to get some vintage or vintage abroad, like what we have here, this is the paprika, by the way. Do make sure that you get it this month, because I can tell you that the price this month is better than the price this is going to be in the epic sale. So that's thing number one. So if you're wanting to get that in stash, make sure you do that now. The other thing I can tell you is the Naked Skeinz sock and Naked Skeinz machine washable DK. Both have 20% off them at the moment. That is going to be the best price that they're going to be at. So if you're wanting to stock up, because there's a whole heap of markets coming up over the next little bit. So if you are going to be selling some yarn at one of the yarn markets or doing some yarn dyeing just for yourself or whatever it may be, the perfect time to pick up both those qualities is now at 20% off, and that is until the end of the month. So I can tell you that. A good portion of the really incredible specials aren't even in store or online yet. In fact, Claire has gone on holiday this week. I'm flying solo this week, and I have a whole heap of stuff there to sort of upload. So the really good stuff is not going to be unveiled until the sale. And we've got more stock arriving. We've got a whole heap here already, but we've got a whole bunch more. Barbara, you're in the house. I love it, Barbara. I absolutely love it. And look, we must have psychically been aligned. And I even wore something perfectly matching and everything. Honestly, it's gorgeous. I absolutely love it. Thank you so much. And there's Dee, another orange lover. Look at this, Dee. Whew. This is a bit of you too. Anyway, sorry, I'm getting distracted. Where was I? Sale. Yeah. Oh, so we've got quite a. There will be some discounts. Store-wide discount for starters. Everything will have a discount on it. I'm feeling very Briscoes, inspired by somebody who came into the shop once and said, "Oh, I love you. You're my Briscoes lady of yarn." And I took that as a compliment. I mean, gosh, if I could have longevity like Tammy, I'd be very happy. So I the sale, this sort of has a bit of a Briscoes vibe about it this year. But yes, some of the stock coming in, honestly, we've got things out the back door here that we're waiting to pop into the shop for epic sale, and there will be a whole heap online. We've got a huge amount that's up with Steph, our photographer, at the moment, so she'll be photographing all that stuff across this next week or so, and there'll probably be another lot to go up. We've got, what else have we got? We've got some stuff that's only going to be in store because the amounts of it we can't get those online. So if you are looking at making a little rota up to the bay, it's going to be on for just over 2 weeks. So you've got a good period of time to get here. A visit in store will definitely be worth it because of what we will have. There'll be so much more in store. I'm going to have to take this off because I can hear it banging and clanging. Because look at that. Isn't that pretty? And it goes with what I'm wearing so beautifully. Actually, the lovely Deb Shaheen from Revive Yarns made that for me. Isn't that beautiful? Anyway, I digress. I'm getting distracted. Yes, so that's the sale. So that is coming up next month. So March is always this really exciting time. After the sale finishes in March, there's something that will be happening in Wellington as well. So I'll let you know a little bit more about that closer to the time. But I am also, yes, I've got a few things. March is going to be a big month. Few things on the boil in March, which is really, really exciting, really exciting. Oh, yay, and I've got Karen here as well from across the pond. I hope everything's going well across with you, Karen. And check your inbox, actually. I've just replied to the email you sent me over the weekend. Yes, so exciting. It's really good. Now, as you know, from Thursday, I finished my second Miss Jane, and it's really quite a different Miss Jane to any of the others I've knitted before, other than the fact of the shaping here, where you've got the bodice that comes down in this direction, and then the body that moves around in the more traditional direction. The rest of it is quite different. I've added lace panels on the sleeves and longer pieces across the cuff. Hey, Sandra, we missed you, Sandra. I hope everything's going well down south. Oh, here we go. I'm so happy I'll be home for the sale. Sandra's down south at the moment. She's a regular visitor to our store, and we miss you, Sandra, so it'll be good to have you back. Yes, I got that all done. So it's in the shop at the moment on the mannequins. So do come in and check that out if you have the chance to do it. And I will take some photographs of it. I've been totally slack and I haven't done that. So I did mention last Thursday that I've got a hankering to do some baby, and I also wanted to knit something for my best friend for his birthday, which is at the end of April. And I had a look I showed you some of the stuff. It was like a trip down memory lane, having a look at some of the baby knits that I did for my boys way back when. Now, my boys are about to turn 13 and 15. So, it was a while ago. And I had a sort of little dig at. I found the Claire Keaton pattern book that I did so much out of. I did a bit of fossicking around on Thursday, and I actually found it with all the bits and bobs I had here, which was great. So I took that home. And then that's when I had the brainwave, and I showed you a whole number of little jackets that cardigans that I'd knitted, and they were all sort of free-form numbers that I hadn't really designed, done. Actually, I'll pull them up. Describe them for those that weren't here on Thursday. Let me pull them up. Let me just hold un momento, por favor. Let me just do this. Oh, come back here, baby panda. We have the technology, and let's sort of turn this on. Hopefully this screen share doesn't decide to poop itself today like it has done in other days. Right. Very good. Show and stream. Right, here we go. Right, so the one that I think that I spent a bit of time showing you guys. So this is my Bebe Chocolat, which I designed years ago, and it's just a very simply constructed sweater, top down, using increases, Raglan increases here, and then just worked through the body. So I had that I could have dug up. But what I was wanting to sort of have a look at was, this is the Anna and Elsa, which was stripes there, but actually this is probably the better example here. Yes, this is the better example. So this is a little cardigan. These are little cardigans that I did. As you can see, I had some leftover. This was some hand spun yarn here. And in fact, it may be even hand spun or Noro. This was some other scrap yarn. And this was a really good example of what it was that I was trying to achieve. Because I did a whole heap of those little jackets. I sort of did it where I picked up stitches along there with a really simple little band and popped some tiny little buttons in for a button band. And I thought, no, that's what I want to do, because it was it's a kimono sort of style. And I remember with my boys, it was one of those little cardigans that I loved, because they were, who remembers, trying to get babies dressed sometimes a real mission, because they sort of, they're all limpy and limbed, and these were just easy to slip on and off, and they were the sort of thing that I would get my chaps dressed in when we were heading out somewhere. We're heading out, and I could throw one of these on, whack a hat on them, biff them in the capsule or the buggy, and away we'd go. And then obviously when you're at home and things are warmer, you would strip them down. So, and do you think I could remember? Of course I didn't write down what I did, because that would have been organised of me. So what I ended up doing, and I hope that's gone back to the main screen, it's got a habit of blue screening on me. What I ended up doing is, Pauline's asking what's the pattern for the hat. The hat is called the Green Rainbow Cloche. Barbara is in there. Barbara, could you pop a link to the hat? Barbara Quigley knitted it for me, and she's in there, Pauline. And I'll get Barbara, or whoever's fastest fingers, like Eddie McGuire, fastest fingers, pop the pattern link in there for us. So what I did is I then had a sudden brainwave, and I remembered how I started it. In that Clean book I referred to before, there was a pattern in there that I loved, and I used the proportions of it had a wide neckline, of the wide neck with the shoulder portions, because it was a raglan shoulder, and the front, to give me the starting point of, oh, don't clang that against the microphone, that's not good, the starting point. So literally, that's all I did. Cast that on, pop some markers in those divided points, and then started playing around with some Raglan shaping. No, so I just knit. So I've gone and used, and I wanted to do this because it was the same as the principle that I had before. You have all these yarns, rolling around. And so we had these yarns, these gorgeous pulse yarns left over from when Dell knitted our shift for us. And I had these little bits left. And I thought, well, it just makes perfect sense to pull them together with something. So I've sort of cast that on that bit at the top. And then I sort of thought, right, what am I going to put that with? So it was time to dive into, thank you, Suzanne, time to dive into Deep Stash. And this, honestly, this is from Deep Stash. This is a Joe Sharp yarn that we made. It predates me working at Skeinz, working for the mill, and this is my 15th, 16th year here. So this is probably, I've had this in stash probably 18 years, thereabouts. And it's an alpaca, merino alpaca wool blend, just a soft two-fold twist. It's actually a really lovely yarn. I've got quite a bit of that in stash. When it came sort of, they were all remnant balls, all missized balls, and it was one of those yarns that I really liked, and so I bought heaps of it. And so I've added that to it. And as you can, oopsie, oh gosh, knocking the microphone. As you can see, it's knitting up really well. And so I've actually just divided for the sleeves there, as you can see. And I'm now starting to work down the body. Now, this was sort of one little play around afternoon's work. Baby stuff goes so fast. I haven't knit anything on a small scale for such a long time. I mean, I think the last small thing I knitted was the Kiwi Hat by Charles ages ago. I've just been working on large-scale project after large-scale project after large-scale project. To actually jump to something like this has been such a treat. But this is the thing. That's all I started with these measurements at the top, and then I'm just winging it. Now, the sizing on this so far, it will probably be somewhere in the vicinity of newborn to 3-ish months. But this is the nice thing. You can just kind of wing it. You can have a bit of fun with it. You can play around with some stripes. And you know what? This is the nice thing about this style, this sort of kind of loose jackety kimono-y style, is it doesn't have to be terribly fitting. I mean, it's designed to just be a popover for a wee babe. And that's where I'm at with that. So I'm going to keep fussing along with that and having a little play around. And before anyone gets excited and asks, will I write that pattern up? It'll be like all the others, guys. It's on my Round to It program. I'm hopeless. I know I'm genuinely hopeless. If you wanted, the best place is the Bébé Chocolat, which is one of my patterns, which is based on the principles that I have with this. So, yes, so download that. I know, I'm totally dreadful. I really wish I was as organised and wonderful as someone like our Libby, but no. And I think it's just, yeah, I'm not scatterbrained when it comes to all of this stuff. I just have a million miles and a million things going on at once, and I just never quite get to where I need to be. Right. So then the next mission was finding something for the best friend, and actually Barbara, bless her, and it's actually quite good. There were a number of things in there, Barbara, that I really did like. Barbara sent me a whole heap of patterns from her vintage collection, and I'm actually going to have a good go through them, because some of them I think might end up on the PDF collection for you guys. There's some really good classic designs for both men, women, and kids, and everything in between. It's fantastic, really fantastic. But I knew what I wanted. So I'm wanting to knit for my best friend. He's been hinting for years, like over a decade, that he sort of quite likes the idea of a really classic sort of Aran sweater. And I kind of knew what I wanted to do, but I couldn't find quite the right thing. So I would find ones that had the sort of the Aran style, but they all had quite close crew necks, and I know he's not fond of a crew neck. I could have made the neck adjustments and put in a V-neck or what have you, but it wasn't really what I was after. And I was looking for probably a Hellman neck, which is a buttoned neckline and a little bit lower across the neck. So I trawled through all the books behind me here. I trawled through a lot of the stuff that was available online, and I just didn't quite find it. I mean, how often have we had that, guys? You know what you want, and you just can't quite find it. So while sitting in bed knitting that little baby thing on Saturday morning, I had the big eureka moment. I went out to make some coffee, and it hit me. I thought, ooh, in the back of one of my stash cupboards, I have a little collection of magazines and a couple of sort of slip folders with a number of patterns that I've had for donkey's years. And I used to have subscriptions to Interweave and The Knitter and a whole bunch of magazines back in the day. And actually, I don't now. With Ravelry and stuff, it's, so hard. And so I was literally at the point on Saturday morning where I was thinking, oh, look, I've got a book of Aran, and actually, but Margaret's saying here, True Fisherman's Guernsey. Yeah, I've got a couple of books on all those motifs, so I could have just designed it and done it myself, which is where I was heading towards. And then I remembered this little stack of magazines and such in the back of the cupboard, and I'd kept these magazines when I got rid of a lot of them, and most of these magazines I gave away at a can, the last can or the one before, or I gave them away here in the shop. Some were sold over previous years, but I'd kept a small collection of them, and these were magazines that had patterns in them that they had a really vast collection of patterns in them that I was like, you know what, this as a collection, as an entire collection within this magazine is actually fantastic, and I do want to hold on to it. And I knew that two of them that were in there were because of the men's patterns that were in there. So, lo and behold, Interweave from spring 2017. And in fact, the one that I'm knitting is the one that is featuring there on the cover. So this is the Point Judith Pullover by Josie Mercier. Now, I haven't looked this up, and I probably could. I'm picking most of these interweave patterns now. You don't have to have the magazine. Most of these patterns are now available direct from Interweave as PDF downloads, which is great. So they're generally loaded in Ravelry, and you can go across to Interweave, but you should be able to find them on interweave.com. So this is it here. And it had everything that I was looking for. It had sort of classic Aran styling. I liked the fact that the braided cable wasn't just your classic rope braid. It was a asymmetrical offset braided cable. It's got a lovely little wishbone cable there as well in between, as opposed to just a moss stitch or garter reverse stocking stitch gaps. And it also had under the arm some double moss. And I thought, that's it. It's perfect. So that is what I thought, great, ideal. I'm really happy about that. And it is knitted. They did it in a wool cotton, would you believe? In a wool cotton. And it was done in, and let me go and find the pattern page. Oh, wrong page. 38. Right. So originally it was done in a wool organic cotton mix, and it was knitted for a 3.75 to 4.5 millimeter. And that yarn that they were using was essentially a DK yarn. So I had a look at it, and I really wanted to use the vintage aboard, and I had a little bit of a play around, and I also checked sort of chest measurements, and it was really funny because I kind of had a bit of a guess at where the BFF was, and I had a guess at 41 inches. This one's modelled with 1 inch of positive ease, and I thought, I'd sort of, you he might want a little bit more ease than that. And happened to speak to him, so I then said to him, "Don't need your chest measurement." And he said, "Why?" And I said, "Just give me your chest measurement." So I think he's now quite hopeful that I'm knitting him something. And I was bang on the money. He was spot on 41. So what I've gone and done is I have actually upped my needle sizes ever so slightly. So I've gone from a 4.5 millimeter needle to a 5 millimeter needle. And instead of doing a full swatch on this, I have actually started knitting the sleeve. This is an Ethan trick, this one. So I've started knitting the sleeve, doing an Ethan. And that way I can sort of test everything out and see how it looks. And then if you've knitted a sleeve and it's like, I need to go back, you've not done a big panel across the front. I'm pleased to report, tickety-boo, really happy with it. It's just altered the ease. It's probably going to give him another 1/2 inch to 1 inch of extra ease, which I think will be about right, which is ideal. And I wanted to show you my progress so far. It has been years since I've knitted a full-scale Aran pattern. So I've done some travelling stitch patterns. I did the Kiwi Hat by Chow, and then a few years ago I did the Ivy Trellis Hat and such by Alana Dacos. So these are all smaller scales, but I've not done a full garment Aran design for, I can't think, it's been a long time. It's not that I'm not capable. I just, hadn't got around to them. So I thought, no, I'm actually going to enjoy doing this. So for starters, look at those on some straights. Look at this. Oh, dug that out of the good old inox Bakelite, eh? Love them. I'm actually about to switch over to these though. I'm going to do that at lunchtime today. These are our new beechwood needles. The 4mm are already in stock, and the others will start coming in fairly soon. Absolutely delighted with those. Anywho, I digress. Back to this. So this is the sleeve so far. As you can see, it is done out in a number of panels. Let's sit back a little bit back here. There we go. Let's move the microphone so I don't knock you over again. Right, so what we have here is we've got this is a double moss pattern through here. You see that? Here we go, double moss. Then you've got a braided cable. Then you've got this wishbone cable, another braided cable, another wishbone, another braid, double moss. So it's fairly straightforward. So this is one of the things that I wanted to talk to you guys about. If you've knitted a sweater, you've got the understandings of the construction of a sweater, you feel like you've got that down, and then you see this and you go, oh, that's gorgeous. I really want to knit that. Oh, but no, it's too hard. I don't know how. Bullshit. It's not too hard. I'm going to tell you why it's not too hard. Seriously, this is no harder. If you've even been playing around with colour work, we've been talking a lot about colour work, this is no harder than any of those things. And these are a couple of little tricks that I do because I'm easily distracted and I'm always watching TV, and quite often when I'm knitting, alcohol is actually involved, particularly on the weekends, not necessarily during the week, but, you know, by the time Friday and Saturday comes round, you know, we winesies come out to play, and I still keep knitting, and that can be dangerous. So what are some of the things that you can do to actually make your knitting life a lot easier? And there's several. So thing number one, what I love about these classic Aran patterns, as you can see, I have chosen this classic cream. Easier to see, have to say, that's number one. It is much, much easier to see. So that is thing number one. The next thing is, and I'm going to show you the pattern here. The pattern instructions essentially talk about each one of those sections as a separate charted section. I'm going to spin this around to show you. So there you go. See that there? So there's like the braided cable there, the wishbone cable there, and then on a previous page, sits there under stitch guide, the double moss. So then the pattern instruction is working the rib, la la la. That's all easy peasy. We know how to do that. And then it is saying work knit 1, work 6 stitches in moss stitch, purl 2, work braid chart over 10 stitches, then work wishbone chart, then repeat for that, which means you repeat your braid, repeat your wishbone, do one more braid, then do purl 2, do your moss chart, and then you're at your end. So it actually hasn't divided out what you need to do over each segment of the pattern. Now, I know for some people, they like to have all their instructions written out, so they know exactly what they need to do. So here's a couple of things that you can do. And to be honest, I, for years, tended to be one of those people. However, you know, you learn a few little sly tricks here and there. And one of the little tricks that I've learned, and I have to admit, I've gotten over my phobia of charts now, especially it was because you would see these charts, like one entire page that's just a chart, and you go, but I've always learned the best way to eat a whale is one bite at a time. It's the same with knitting when it comes to charts, one bite at a time. Break it down. And this is and they've already done this for you. So what I did is I took that instruction. I always actually photocopy my patterns like this because I tend to write over stuff. So I took my photocopy. I took that instruction there and see how I've got sort of lines and bits in there. What I do is I break each of those sections down within the knitting and see the markers there. So I break each portion down and place a marker. And that just helps, instead of freaking out thinking, oh my gosh, I'm going to have to be looking at this all the time and trying to figure out what stitch goes next with 80 stitches odd on a needle. You don't have to. When you break it down into little bite-sized chunks, especially when they're repetitive bite-sized chunks, you're actually having to memorize or read a hell of a lot less and not necessarily reading the pattern. So in that first setup row, it was sort of knit 1, then knit 6 in moss. I've actually done some increases now, so that's why there's more there. So I did knit 1, put the 6 in for the moss, then that delineated a row. Then there was a couple of purl 2s, which is quite common around a set. So I added those purl 2s. So to my head, I added the purl 2s to this braided cable. So then that kept it as a distinct group. Purl 2, braided cable chart, purl 2, boom. And I even wrote that either side of my chart there. So I remembered where I did that. Then the wishbone, or where is it? Then the wishbone, then the braid, and wrote that down. So when it came to knitting the charts itself are relatively straightforward. I mean, the wishbone cable is literally stocking stitch, except for the cabled row, which is row 3 of a 4-row repeat. Well, that's not tough. And you've got your cabled instructions there of what to do. And then your braided cable, you've got row 3 is one of the repeats, and row 9 is one of the repeats. And that's across a 12-stitch repeating pattern. And then you've got some increases to throw in as well. So then you're thinking, well, I'm juggling. Not only am I juggling all of those things, where do I jug in to do my cabling? Where do I jug in to do my increasing? How do I go and do that? How I go and do that is it's so funny, you're going to see stuff from a previous thing under there, but I'm going to show you this. I then write my rows out like this. So this is representative of every single row that I'm working. So I will write them out. So then you've got row 1, that's an increased row, wishbone cable, so I need to cable. Next row is just read your knitting, 3rd row read your knitting, 4th row read your knitting, 5th row I need to do the braid cabling and the wishbone cabling. Row 6 read your knitting, row 7, see how I'm going? And then I actually mark it out each row when I have to do something special. So then every other row in between, where all I'm having to do is literally knit my knits and purl my purls or moss my mosses, it then means that you just read the roadmap of your knitting as you're going along every single row. And it then takes a lot of that stress away, because you can then tick the next row off. You can have a look down. Right, row 5, I need to do the braided cable this row and the wishbone cable this row. Excellent. And you go through and you do those. So it's just a way of simplifying out all of these letters and words, which for a lot of people can be really, really daunting, into a bite-sized chunk. So that's how I do it. I mean, others of you may have different methods of how you do it, but this is just something that I like to do and really, really enjoy. So if you've got any questions about that, jump in and ask them, because I'll happily ask any of those. Now, Bronwyn is asking, beautiful work. Wondering why you've chosen straight needles to knit this beautiful jumper with. Not saying it's wrong, just curious. I like to do most of my knitting on circulars now for the ease of storage, weight, etc. You obviously have the reason for using straights. As I mentioned, a lot of people I've come across think circulars are only for circular knitting. It can be a real aha moment. To be honest with you, the reason I chose the straights is that I went hunting around for I've got some fixed circulars, Eddie fixed circulars like this, in 5mm, and I couldn't find them. is the short answer. I do have a Addy Click set, but I've got short tips. And when it comes to knitting larger stuff like this, particularly with the cables and stuff, I actually prefer a longer shank as opposed to the short tip. And I just couldn't find my longer shanked 5mm needles. So because I knew this was the sleeve, I thought, oh, well, I'll just do it on straights. And as it transpired, I've now come in this morning and I want to test these out and see how they perform as well. So I will probably knit the sleeves on straights. The pattern does suggest knitting this actually on a circular needle for the body and weight of the stitches on the front and the back. You will be able to, I'm going to actually test it out. You should theoretically be able to do your front and back on a straight needle. It will be a little bit of a jimmy jam on these, but I actually bounce it. To be honest, when I bounce around, a lot of it is just purely out of necessity because I can't find what I want at the time. But I actually quite like bouncing between. It's just me. Yeah, I'm very ambidextrous when it comes to sort of needles like that. But yes, that's why I did it. Is I do, when it comes to cabling, I have to admit I do like using a longer shank on my needles. So as I said, the Addies that I generally use, or Knit Pros, but Addies that I generally use have got a shank like this, whereas the ones that I could put my hands on were my short tips, which are great for little small sleeves in the round or lighter weight projects, but for this I wanted that. So no particularly special reason at all. Patricia's saying, great tip using the stitch markers in your Aran cabling. Look, it is, and it's something, it really does make a difference because when it means that you're reading the chart, you're actually reading a really narrow roadmap. And I don't just do it for Aran knitting, I do it for colour work as well. So if you remember when I did my gold wig on my Swancho, did I do it with the Swancho? May not have actually, because that was more repetitive actually, so I didn't do it with the Swancho. But I definitely did it with the gold wing because it was all those sort of feathers that were down in and it was a repeating colour block, and I just divided the blocks up because then that way when you're doing anything, you're only having to memorise that short passage of stitches, which may only be 8 stitches or 10 stitches or whatever it may be, and it just allows your knitting, it allows you to keep going and flowing with your knitting. Now, just to give you an idea, I cast this on Saturday night, like quite late-ish Saturday night actually, and I thought, oh, and I literally only just got the ribbing out of the way. And I think I got the markers in, and I might have just done a few. I think I did it the first 4 rows just to get past that first cabling run, just to sort of see how things will go. And then this is pretty much the first ball of yarn here. That's the tail left of that first ball. So that was yesterday. Just did that yesterday. And it's honestly knitting up pretty quickly, really. Only slightly slower than I would be doing if I were doing a stocking stitch. And I'm thoroughly enjoying it. Like, you have that whole addictive sort of, I look down at my little table here. I mean, I've only done the first 6. If you wonder why I've broken it down like this, I'll explain it. It's because you increase every 10th or 11th row. So that's why I've done it. So this is 1 full set and then an increase, 1 full set, then an increase, 1 full set, then an increase. And I need to do 11 of these before I go shaping back. So yeah, really. In fact, I may not do 11 of these. I may only do 10. I just need to check the length because obviously I've increased my needle size. It's by the by. It's for me to figure out. But yes, that's how I do it. And it does make a difference. And it does make it a lot easier. And it does break it down. And it actually makes it enjoyable to knit. And particularly too, when you're knitting it in pieces, you've got, it makes it much smaller. And this is the other thing that I do like about doing these sorts of patterns in the traditional worked flat pieced variety. Part of the reason that they do that with Aran's is, as you can see, that's a pretty dense fabric with all the textured stitches, right? And the nice thing about when you've got something that's seamed like that is it gives it some firmness and structure. The other really nice thing I don't mind seaming. So personally for me, seaming anything doesn't bother me in the slightest. And I'll cover off actually when we get to the seaming of this, a couple of my little tricks for seaming. What I love is the fact that you're just doing it again in little bite-sized pieces. So I've started with the sleeves. I'm actually going to do the sleeves first. And I did it because I wanted to obviously check my gauge as well. So I'm going to use this as my gauge guide and row guide. Yeah. And then you've and it doesn't seem to take as long. And then whereas when you often knit on the round, I mean, how often have we been there, particularly with a yoked sweater before you divide for your armholes, and you've got sort of 400 or odd stitches sitting on a needle, and you're going around, and it's taking you 20 minutes to get from the beginning of one round to the end of another, and it just seems to take forever. Whereas this is like, gosh, this is so quick, because I started out with 70 odd stitches and I'm up to sort of 80 odd now, and it seemed super fast. So it's just the little mental tricks that you play. Right, now Janice is saying, I use stitch markers for my Aran and completed lace, completed, or I'm assuming you mean complicated lace, but I use pins for garment bags. Use the pins from garment bags as they're smaller and lighter and they do not stretch the stitch. Writing out the rows can work better than using a row counter. Actually, and it's funny you should mention that, Janice. The writing out the rows was a trick that I learned how to do. I knitted my very, very first full complicated Aran when I was 18. And I actually did it for my best friend. He's still got it, actually, my best friend from high school. And we'd finished high school by this stage. He was off at university. And I had this sort of Aran with basket weave, and it was good old. It was a Greta, I think it was a Gita Shrada naturally pattern, and of course didn't have row counters, weren't available at the Banana and Gizzy where I bought my bits and pieces. That sort of yarn accessory didn't exist, and it was a 14 row repeat that I was working with, and I'd never done anything like that. And I remember the fantastic lady that used to work in the store there said to me, she said, write out, mark your rows off. And so that's what I did. I remember having a piece of cardboard, doing something very similar to this, where I did each repeat, each row repeat, had them across. So I didn't actually write out what I had to do in each row. I had that separate pattern there, but I just would mark off where I was at and what row I was at in terms of the pattern. And it's sort of a habit that's always stuck. And I've just found it really, really easy to do ever since, and it's something that's always done. And actually it's funny because when I caught up, I'm still in touch with that friend, and it was really funny. They moved house and he was doing some sorting and some cleaning, and he actually found the sweater that I had knitted. And I said to him, well, I'm A, impressed you kept it, B, it survived all your years at university, and he's now happily married with four children, and he still has it. So yeah, so and it was knitted in Southlander, which I didn't know came from here back in those days. So it's 1990 I knitted that 30 plus years ago. Show my age. Rhoda's saying, don't use a row counter, have small notebooks to write down your rows. Absolutely. And if there's repeats right there, yeah, absolutely. It's we all do it. And I mean, anyone that knows me, I've got these. I mean, how often have you guys seen these notebooks? I've got 4 of them currently on the go, because I'll leave one somewhere and so I'll start another one. These are all Knit August Night notebooks, and I have these notebooks everywhere, and I don't throw any of the notes away, and I just have them all in there. I like these because they're ring bound, and if I need to get a piece of paper out. I can just pull a piece of paper out to write to give to somebody. But they do. I am the notebook queen. And even though, I know a lot of people use digital options, and there are some really great apps and things that you can use, and I've seen some on iPads and the like, which are fantastic. I think it's because I'm always on the go and rolling around, I've just always got my notebooks. But there will be a solution that will work for you. You will have the perfect thing, and whether or not that's a row or chart guide on an app, whether or not it's a notebook, or whether it's the photocopied this with the scribbles and the margins, it's whatever works, isn't it? It's whatever gets you to the end of your journey at the time. Right, so that's what's happening with the best friend. So you guys are going to be going on this little Aran journey with me, so strap in for that. It will be, because I'm picking, I have a deadline, so I've got a deadline of late April. So that's when I want to have it done by. And then, but wait, there's more. Of course, so I started to pull this out for the BFF, and in this pile of magazines that I'd kept. So this was the first interweave collection. So there we go. That's spring. So I'd kept that because it had in it, and I'm just going to flick through these and show these to you, because Ethan and I talked about this. He talked about, so Ethan, for example, is totally obsessed with the Brooklyn Tweed Winter 2015 collection. Totally obsessed. He's knitted the Ye shoe out of it. He's knitted, I think the tapestry he's working on at the moment is out of that collection. In fact, he's in the process of working through the entire collection because he's that obsessed with it. I don't hold to the same level of obsession as our Ethan. That's why I have our Ethan, because he's so good at that. But see, this is another one that's in this collection. Here it is there. And it was just, I just remember seeing this thinking, this is just beautiful. It's never going to date. This is something it was a nautical theme. So this one's a little bit more Cape Breton, which again is fantastic to knit. And then, this is another one. This is more Nordic. But see, this is really current now with the colour work. It's so funny. I'm looking at this collection now, thinking there's more relevance in this collection now. Really neat, simple hat. And yeah, this was the other one. Look at that. Isn't that gorgeous? That is knitted in a knitted in a worsted. That, I think that in our Southlander oatmeal would look like the duck's nuts. That one is called the Charleston Pullover by Cheryl Chow. And this is done in a Donegal tweed. Oh, I do love me a Donegal tweed. Isn't that gorgeous? It's just, there was heat. I could keep going. There's another whole section in this as well of colour work. Actually, I'll flick you through the colour works. There we go. Oh. Look at this. If you've got an elephant number, look. Little elephants. It's lovely. It was great. And you know what the funny part was with this one here? Part of the reason I kept this book was it had both this one and the previous one that I'm going to show you, is it had, because the two, they had this tutorial on tubular cast-ons. So it's actually the other reason why I kept the book. Tubular cast-on tutorial. So that's that. So this one was the spring. Let's go back to the winter, and I'm going to show you that winter. I can tell my children have had, you can tell I've got teenage boys, right? Look at what's been drawn on my magazine. Look at that. Teenage boys. Well, they would have been pre-teens back then when they, I couldn't believe it. Honestly. So this one was from the previous edition. Yes, winter, previous edition. And I kept this one because its main collection, it had the tubular. So this is part 1 of the tubular cast on tutorial, and the other one was part 2. I kept this one because it had a collection called Whiskey and Wool. And here's our same model. And look at that. Sort of Gansey style. This one more Gansey or Guernsey style. And that, my friends, is going to be knit for my husband because he saw that I was organising the other one for the BFF, and I haven't knit a jumper for him. I generally do one every 2 to 3 years, and I'm due. So I showed him that, and I said, well, what do you think of this? And he's like, oh, actually, I really like that. So, and look at that one, though. It's colour work. See, this is what, 4 years old, these books. But it just shows you, and I just want to show you these basic cables. Look at those. Oh, so yes. So that other one will be the next one that I'll be working through. So with any luck, this cream one won't take too long. And this one here is the other one that I've got. It's called the Limerick Henley by Maree Benedetto. And it is done sort of, he's picked out a yarn. The yarn he's picked out, did I bring some with me? No. The yarn he's picked out is the ebony in Aran Incognito. So it's going to be actually a dark walnut colour. He wanted a darker one. So yes, so that's going to be the next project. Right. Patricia's saying, can you tell me if those magazines are still available? Yeah, Interweave, I do know, have, I think they have all of these in digital copies. So interweave.com. If they've still got the online going, because I know that I've got a funny feeling as a publishing house they're not around anymore, but I'm pretty certain you can still get the patterns online. I think that's still a thing. I'm just so glad that I didn't throw those out, to be honest. So that is what I'm going to be up to. So I reckon that's going to keep me going across the winter, which will be great. And I sort of, they've kind of got that vintage classic feel, and it's just nice to do something a little bit different, break it down, different style of knitting, different techniques, construction, just keeping it, changing it up. There we go. Oh, Pauline, onto it. Thank you so much. Pauline has just gone and popped on the Facebook the digital link to those magazines. So actually, if I'm organised, I will fire those links in the show notes as well. But on that note, I'm going to get going because I need to cover some lunch. Heather and I are flying solo here today with the demo. So until then, I hope you have a great week. I hope you've really enjoyed what I've gotten up to across the weekend and our new change of plans of what I'm sort of at on the needles. Make sure you keep sharing what you're knitting over on the Skeinz Speakeasy. I am loving all the vintage patterns that are there. There's some, it's just fantastic. It just really does look great. I will keep you up to date with what's happening. I'll flick you out a wee newsletter today, and I will be back here again later in the week. And you can catch up on my progress, see how things are going. And if you've got any questions for me on anything that you're working on, save those up and let me know in the live chat, and I can see if I can answer those for you. But until then, have a great day, and I will talk to you again soon. Bye.